I'm just watching that you're missing on all, man. Come on.
Well, sometimes there's nothing better than expanding your horizons, and that's what today's lesson is all about. It's better to love your sport, but always appreciate other sports as well, because there's so much to learn and earn. Lots of experiences, and that's what I did today. So today's guest on my show is Gregory Bryce, a sports journalist at the Gleaner Company. Yeah, that's right, Kingston, Jamaica. When I was reading about George's work, the idea struck me. Why not expand the boundaries and listen to those sport journalists who brings value? Yes, we cover cricket because it's something I always loved, but sometimes other stuff can also add value. And George did just that, covering the Jamaican Premier League, speaking to track and field coaches who were suffering due to lack of support and funds. Do you know Jamaican cricket or Jamaican sports in general are mostly funded by corporates? Yes, it is. So we covered beach cricket, Jamaican sport, track and field games, soccer, and share insight about favorite football clubs. So why are you listening to me? It's not a monologue, right? Don't worry. Let's welcome Georgie to the show.
Thank you so much for this, right?
Sure, no problem. When I saw your message, I thought this would be like an interesting podcast that you had, so that's why I agreed to it as well.
Question which I have sent you is all about cricket, right? But
Right.
definitely more than cricket, I have a lot of questions because when I was coming here, I did a bit of research about you, and when I got to know that okay, you are actually into a lot of sports, not just cricket, right? So basically, let's start with the current post which you had that is about how Jamaican Premier League is working over there, specifically
Right.
when it comes to the Treasure Beach FC, the
Right.
coach Umar
Right.
Ranbo, and obviously the team is going through a bit of struggle. And according to that, Ungarden or Cavalier Mount Pleasant, these two teams are actually on the top. So, what sort of interview that you had with Omar? If you can just give me a bit of.
Right. Okay. So, the Jamaican Premier League is actually a league that is, for the last few years, has been growing a lot with the sponsorship, the commercial as well, and the inclusion of a team like Treasure Beach is actually a really historic. So the area that so Jamaica as a country is divided into 14 parishes, basically states of sorts, and Treasure Beach FC is from the area called Saint Elizabeth. Now, no, there hasn't been a team from Saint Elizabeth to play in the Premier League in over 40 years. So their promotion last season was really historic. Now, of course, when you're coming into the top flight of any league in any country, there's going to be a gap in the talent between playing in the second division and the first division. And they had brought in the coach, Omar Wedderburn, who is really a coach with he's a coach without a pedigree. So they brought in him with the idea to bring him on board and to help them stay up. However, um, at the start of the season, he was really confident. However, midway through, they had really went into a slump. They had endured a 12-game losing streak. They were just above the bottom of the table, above another team who also just got promoted. So when I spoke with him in January, he said that they were currently in the process of recruiting new players, basically getting the players that they think they would need to keep them up.
Transformation time, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was his original stance, saying that okay, we're in a bad place, but we still have half of the season left, so we'll turn around. Then a month later, he then announced in a post-match interview that he would be leaving the club.
Sure.
So when I spoke with the chairman of the club, it was over the phone because I'm from Kingston, they're from St. Andrew, which is on the other side of the country. So I spoke with them over the phone, had a lengthy discussion with both of them. And what I've gotten from it was that he felt that for the betterment of the club, it was the right decision for him to leave because obviously he was not doing what was necessary for the team. So he felt that for the team to go forward and to potentially save their season, it would be best for him to step away. Of course, the chairman at the time, well, the chairman now, has said that they still had faith in the coach. and they were willing
Mhm.
to stay with him for the entire season. So it came as a surprise to them that he wanted to step down, but but they saw his side of it and they had to accept his decision. So
Mhm.
right now that is where they're at, a place where they're now depending on their vice coach to step in as an interim head coach
Mhm.
to hopefully save their season and avoid that relegation. They are now 12th. They are 8 points behind the team that they would need to pass to survive, and they are just drawn with that team. So with now only 7 games left, they're hoping to close an 8 point gap.
Yeah, I think they have a game right in April, if I'm not wrong, against Iton Gardens.
Right. So the teams that are above them, the games that are above them now are really important games because they're playing against some of the better teams in the league. Arnett Gardens is one of the most attacking teams. They're known for their explosive power. They have a few players that have went on to play for the national teams. So
Sure.
it's a really steep task ahead of them. And they've already played against the two of the relegation rivals. So there's no easy games now left for them.
Sure, sure. A lot of times, what happened when we see a lot of teams who are struggling when it comes to any sport, right? So a lot of times we tend to attack the captain and the coach. Okay,
Right,
and when it comes to coach, it's also for them. It's also a sink and swim position a lot of times.
right. So the idea that I got from my interviews with these persons is that Treasure Beach are hoping to survive, but they're also preparing themselves for that relegation and then to potentially have a consolid have a consolidatory season in the second division and then move back up again.
Sure.
So they've already brought in a few players who they think are Premier League quality. Whether they
Mhm.
can show that is going to be a completely different matter. But they are obviously making those strides in towards that they're going to fight all the way to the end. They're not going to
Sure.
lay down, and even though they are seen as potentially easy pickings for other teams, these are the teams that we should get the 3 points from. They won't be just lying over and allowing persons to walk above them, to walk over them.
Sure.
So that's definitely something for Treasure Beach. An interesting story that is developing through the rest of the season to see if they can pull off basically the impossible right now.
So okay, let's jump before everything, and I'm sure. Look, when it comes to sports journalism, right? Sports
Right,
journalism is something that which comes naturally to you. I'm not saying a lot of people actually turn themselves into some other position. Like for example, someone is doing crime reporting and have also a keen interest on sports, so they also do some sort of a sports reporting. But naturally, sports comes. You're not actually following that. So how your journalism started? How your love for sports and everything started?
okay, here's the thing. I actually played sports when I was younger. At
Okay.
the team that the team that Treasure Beach are actually chasing right now. I previously played for them. I was one of the members of the team that helped them get that promotion. However, I
Sure.
realized that as much as I loved sports, it wasn't my future as an athlete. I
Sure.
I'd much prefer to be the person writing about it, the person's telling those stories rather than the person's on the field. So
Mhm.
so from the beginning, the aim was always to become a sports journalist. So as I said, it is something that came naturally to me because of my past in sports.
Yeah. And writing, right? Because writing is also something which normally it's a flair, right? If you have
Right.
flair, if you don't have flair, but you can actually improvise it if you don't have. But writing is something which obviously I struggled initially, but now I'm also good at it because of the prestigious teachers and everything. So, how your writing started for sports?
Okay, so writing for me, writing basically started because I read a lot as a
Right.
child. I was always reading,
Mhm.
so telling stories became kind of second nature to me, and then that developed
Storytelling, right?
yeah, story writing, yeah. So
Yeah.
that developed into me writing in my pastimes, and then that continued to develop. Then in high school, I had a teacher who noticed my writing, and she had a connection to a newspaper editor who
Yeah.
was a former alumni and one of her past students, and she set that connection to me for him to help me out with those writings. and that really set me on the path. I went to university, studied journalism,
Yeah.
so that really created that professional standard and molded
You all,
that
yeah.
creativity into a professional standard that was needed. So that is how I got into here. Just persons, the right persons at the right time. I'm realizing my love and passion for sports writing and then nurturing that for me.
I just have one more question apart from cricket. That is track and field, because obviously I saw one more post of yours that is about track and field. And
Right,
one thing which actually caught my attention was about the unequal distribution of financial purposes.
right.
So the team, I think, head coach was George Scott. The team for
Greg Scott,
Ferncourt,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And obviously, in India also we saw a lot of time that some school which having a lot of sourceful purposes like financial purposes, they can actually use that particular thing and they can actually beat other teams easily, very easily. So there's a no bit of equal match
yeah,
fight, right?
right,
How why there's an unequal distribution of financial services? Because it's a sport and sports demand equality, right?
right.
So why there's a bit of unequal distribution? I'm sure you had a conversation with George Scott. So what he said about that?
Okay, so a quick of a history lesson as well, because we're going to that as well. So in Jamaica,
Yeah,
there's things called traditional schools and non-traditional schools.
sure.
So, for example, I went to a traditional high school, so I experienced that firsthand. These schools are institutions that were created years ago,
Okay.
centuries ago. For example, my high school, Woolmer's Boys High School, we are, if I remember correctly, we're the oldest. Well, sorry, we're the second oldest English-speaking high school in the Western Hemisphere. So we're over 300 years old. So with that comes a lot of history, a lot of reputation, a lot of um
Prestige, prestige.
successful prestige, right? And
Yeah,
then what that does is that the best students, they want to go to these high schools, these specific high schools, and then when they graduate, they want to also give back to those high schools. So most of the resources and financial power comes from the past students who have done well in their work, and then they're giving back to those schools to continue that tradition. So
sure.
so what happens in there when newer schools are coming up, these are the non-traditional high schools, they might not have that those resources and those alumni that they can fall back on to help support the schools. So
Sure.
they start off far behind the pace in comparison to other schools. So Ferncourt is one of those smaller schools because
Mhm.
as I spoke with coach, he said that for the national championships, which is coming up in March, his team is only carrying 10 athletes. When you compare those to other schools who are carrying maybe 5 times, 6 times more, so he can only compete in a small amount of events as well as might not have the resources to train his athletes to the highest quality. So
Sure.
when these schools have these one in a million athletes that come up randomly or they are coming through these systems, when they're being exposed to these competitions, the larger schools are taking notice. And as an athlete, when you are being noticed by a school who has more resources, there are more eyes on them, and they can give you opportunities like scholarships that you might not
Sure.
get from a smaller school, it is really a hard opportunity to turn down.
Yeah.
And that has always been a struggle, not only in track and field in Jamaica, it's all across the board. If you look at some of our best athletes and you track the
Sure.
school that they're from, they're more often than not from the larger schools. The only few exceptions you would say is like Usain Bolt. He came from William Nib, which is actually a really small school, and he is seen as the exception and not the norm. So that
Yeah.
is actually what the coach is going through right now. He has already lost two of his athletes last season to bigger schools, and he's hoping that the athletes that he has right now, especially his youngest athlete, Amina Scott, who is one of the favorites for her age group, he's hoping that with the support that she's getting from the community and from the school, she will be able to
Mhm.
stay there and become the face of that school so that more athletes can see that, hey, I don't need to go to a bigger school if I'm able to find that success at my small school.
Sure, sure, sure. I think no, it's a fact, right? Not about the Jamaica, but all over the island, not about the country, all over the world, actually,
Yeah.
right? When we see when it comes to unequal distribution of wealth action. So yeah, I think Let's talk about some cricket also, Georgie, because something about I also want to discuss from the other people. Recently, I interviewed Jerome Foster. I think you know Jerome Foster. He's a national
Yeah,
award winner from Jamaica television, and I had a conversation with him when it comes to how Jamaica, West Indies cricket works, and he gave me a lot of insights about how one Jamaican player can get selected for the Caribbean team, West Indies team.
right.
How I just want to know from you two things. Okay, first of all, yes, I want to know again that how Jamaican cricket structure works, not other islands, like how many tournaments you have, and other one is in the current area, the current sources, because T20 World Cup is coming. There are a lot of
Right.
things coming, and we know that West Indies suffered a lot in the current session when it comes to ICC tournaments. Who two or three players are there in the Jamaican circuit who are making it, who are actually pushing the door or saying that, okay, we are here right now and we are able to make to the biggest team? Two or three domestic players I want to know from you, according to you.
I'm not okay. I'm not really as well versed in the personnel, but I do know the overall system. That's something that I'm aware of. So how
Sure,
Jamaica develops its athletes is that they begin at a very young age. There's at the primary school level. They
sure.
have competitions, but for those competitions, it's really limited. There isn't like test cricket and stuff like that. It's really limited in like the T10, T20s. So that is where the first main structure begins at the high school level. Then you move into the more longer formats.
Hmm.
Um, so there are different competitions for the different formats in Jamaica that helps really with that development. You can think of the SDC National T20, which is the Sports Development Commission.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so they are one of the main competitions in Cricket Jamaica for the development of athletes, and then those athletes will move on to the West Indies Championship, which is where each country puts out a
Hmm.
team and they compete at this championship. It's actually ongoing right now. Um, I believe Jamaican Scorpions, I believe they are third in the standings. The last I checked, I would have to double check to make sure, but that is where the development really begins. And then tre- in regards to playing together with the other islands, and then being selected for the West Indies teams, that is a selection process that is really historically
Yeah,
been
bit
brought
complicated. Bit
yeah,
complicated.
because when you think of the Caribbean, it is so many different countries, and despite being so close, there's so many different cultural differences, national pride, and all these things come into play when persons think about the selection process. So
Yeah,
even if a team is selected, it is never really as fully approved all across the board for every single nation, because of course you're going to have a national bias. You're going to say that this player from Jamaica I think should be selected over this player from, say, Guyana or
Barbados,
Barbados
Grenada.
and stuff
Yeah,
like that. So that really happens. So in the place there's a selection panel that is um tasked with this well tasked with this challenge, and to make sure that not only are they selected not just the best team, but they're also making sure that they're selecting the best team from which format, and making sure that there is as little bias as possible in the selection process, so that the West Indies as a whole
mm,
achieves more and comes off as the winner, rather than trying to fulfill any stakeholder
yeah, yeah,
bias. So that would
yeah.
be how the selection process goes in. As regards to players from Jamaica, the personnel, there has there has been a dip in Jamaican cricket. While I wouldn't say that it is not that the interest is not there. Because it
Hmm.
obviously is, it still exists, it's still alive and breathing. The it factor has dwindled a bit over the last few years, and you can say that is res- directly connected to the past results at the ICC events for the West Indies.
Yeah.
Because the Caribbean is a region that they will support, and they will always show their support, but they also love winners. Um, so when they see that the team isn't doing well, and they see that there's, especially with the last ICC World Cup, I think we only won like one match and finished at the bottom of that group standings. That is
2019, and
yeah,
19.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. There there is always that expectations of as us even though we're a small region, we're expected to always be punching above our weight. Always showing that we are we might be small, but our influence should always be felt. So that is really where that comes from for
Okay.
the West Indies. So for me, I'm not. While I do have that national pride, saying that I would want to see Jamaicans doing well, I would
Yeah.
much prefer the case where the West Indies as
West
a
Indies
whole,
doing well.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a region is
Yeah.
doing well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't
You
say,
know, I,
okay, I need to see this Jamaican or that Jamaican there. I say I
yeah.
need to see the best players. And if those best players are Jamaicans, then that is a bonus.
Yeah. I think Robin Powell is a good example. He's currently a T20 captain and he's from Jamaica.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
So yeah. Yeah. You're
these are
saying something.
persons that have proved themselves at that level. And if they're given the accolades and they're given those responsibilities and they have the faith of not just their coaches, but their teammates as well, then all the power to him and I hope he does well. Right.
So yeah, I think totally I just want to know from you because look, everyone have their own perspective about a lot of sports, right? And when I was interviewing Jerome, he said to me that because of lack of like a lot of people know from West Indies, the whole West Indies in general, that currently West Indies suffered when it comes to tournaments. The reason said because of they are actually focusing on the domestic tournaments, which comes up with financial structures, which comes up with a lot of money,
Right.
and obviously they are choosing franchise cricket over international commitment. Do you think it's a reason or it's something else?
I think there is a lot of merit with with that thought. Of course, franchise cricket is something that has been on the rise all across the world. We can
Yeah.
even see recently in America, I believe it's the
MLC, right? Major
yes.
League Cricket.
So that yeah, that is also coming to a fore, and so persons want to see that exciting, short pace, quick action form of cricket. And as on a commercial standpoint, that is really something as that I say, investors would see a lot of return from. So there is that shift towards franchise cricket, and as effect, it has hurt the international cricket um for the West Indies and as well. So sure, there's a lot of merit to that, but I think it should be a case where there's that balance between the two, where we are able to still compete
Mhm.
internationally on that level.
What do you think about schedule window? Because look, there are a lot of tournaments, as I mentioned, domestic tournaments, right?
Right.
And there's a IPL, there's MLC now, and BBL, Big Bash League, and everything contains almost takes around 1 month, 2 months, and then suddenly there's international cricket also suddenly, and again the newbies are not that much experience, which we really need in the national cricket, right?
I mean, I think there's always going to be change in sports as the old guard moves, and I think it is a good idea that to bring in new faces. However, I think it should be a process to that, a case where they're not being thrown into the fire, but rather being ushered in and possibly mentored in by the more experienced players who are there, who have been around that circle, who've been playing at that level, so that the transition from one set of players, from one core of players to another, is as seamless as possible, and there isn't any gap where young players or newer players are expected to perform at the highest level without that learning curve being placed for them. So as so there's really there's really the pro and the cons to that, you know. So and I think this isn't something that just applies to cricket. Even though yes, we're speaking to cricket right now, this is something that applies to every sport really, where
Every team sport, right?
yeah, every team sport where there is the situation of whether you're putting too much pressure on a young core too early, and then when the results are not being met from those young core players, they are being harangued and being criticized unfairly because they are expected to perform at a level that they have never seen before. So
Mhm.
so yeah, I think that is really
Yeah,
some
the main purpose is to not to create all the 11 new players. The main
right,
purpose is for the thing is the transformation is three or four new debutants with alongside the top seven, six players would be there, which actually make a good balance with it, right?
Right. So yeah. So at yes, that's the thing. So they're being exposed to the highest level, but at the same time, the main responsibilities, the pressure is
Mm.
being shared between them and the more experienced players who are able to handle that pressure because they have been there and done that before. So they have that guide of sorts to really acclimatize to the highest level of cricket.
Sure, sure, sure. George, I want to know one more thing from you before we move up to other things. Jamaican cricket, first of all, like I mentioned about how you said how Jamaican cricket select players for the West Indies team. But as I said, dipping form also because of the financial structure. If you're aware about Jamaican cricket financial structure, like how they pay to domestic cricketers, this is also a very important thing to know, right? Because this is the main reason that a lot of people are actually choosing other cricket forms, which is having a lot of money rather than international cricket. Or
Well, I can't speak too much to the financial structure of it, but from my understanding,
Mhm.
this isn't only limited to cricket, but overall in Jamaican sports, it's a case where the Jamaican sports really depend on corporate and private sponsors. So it's a
Okay,
case where the boards, the various different organizations, the federations, the associations for different sports, and in this case would be Cricket Jamaica. Um, they would have their ideas. They obviously want to develop the talent as much as possible and make sure that players are being in players are in competition in the right at the right time so that they are able to be they're able to put their name up up for selection for Jamaica for the West Indies at really at any level. However, they can't really operate without those commercial and financial backing. So they need those sponsorships, they need those bodies behind them to push that league. For example, that's where the SDC league is the SEC National T20 League is one of um the biggest domestic leagues in the
SDC,
island. Yeah,
SDC.
yeah. So that stands for the Sports Development Commission. So they are an organization that really drives a lot of development at the grassroots level up to the senior level. So for
Okay.
that part, I would say that domestically, the financial power comes from the corporate private sponsorship as well as government bodies that for example the Minister of Sports, Culture, Youth and Development in Jamaica. Those are organizations that really drive those financial power.
And are they doing well for cricket also? Because I had a conversation, like I said, to Jerome, and he said to me that other sports are doing really well as compared to cricket, and this is the reason that Jamaican corporates are actually putting money to the other sports like track and field, athletics.
Right. So while Jamaica does do well in cricket, over the last few years, we have obviously seen that shift to other sports in areas. So so that is correct. While the financial is there, it is not as seen as commercially viable. So they have the support. The cricket team, the cricket in Jamaica has that support, but they're not seen as commercially viable as say football in Jamaica, track and field in Jamaica. So they might not have as much financial support in comparison to these other sports.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been, it's again, it's like an unequal distribution, right?
Yeah,
Corporate is a major corporate plays a major role over there when it comes to
right.
sports, right? So this last few questions that I have for you. First question I want to know from you, obviously T20 World Cup is just around the corner. And I think I almost asked a lot of guests about T20 World Cup because this is something which is very special for me
Right.
because this is a time when West Indies need that tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Yes, financially also, and also to again make a comeback. And when it comes to comeback, nothing better than playing in their home ground. And obviously, so how do you see this particular West Indies team going into the World Cup? Because as a captain, Robin Powell, how do you see this particular setup for them?
Okay, so for the upcoming team in the World Cup, there has been some positive signs. Obviously, in recent results, I believe. Well,
India and England, yeah,
yeah.
they've
So
won against them.
yeah, so obviously there's that confidence being built that West Indies is again putting themselves in a position where they're able to compete against some of the best in the world, and they are putting themselves as teams that on their day can compete. So there is that confidence, there is that personal belief. Of course, as someone from the West Indies, I also have to have that belief as well, because otherwise, what's the point, really? But
Yeah,
as much as there's also that those positive signs, there's also some negatives, things that we see that as fans we can see that say, okay, that might need to be improved if we want to go all the way. Where we have won the title twice, I believe 2012 and 2016.
yeah,
Um
2012 and 2016.
yeah. So and with the T20 now coming to the West Indies and and the US, there is that personal pride to play for as well. And we wouldn't want to have a very poor showing in our own backyard.
Mhm.
So going forward is a much of a case now to see how much the team is able to get the pieces together in
Sure.
time for the ICC World Cup.
How you see associate teams coming? Are you aware about a lot of associate teams?
I'm following them mainly more as result based rather than in depth. But I think the case where this is actually really good for the sport. Cricket as cricket has always been a sport that I think has the potential to really grow. It is such a unique sport in the sense of being able to be played fairly easily and be able to
Hmm.
get into that fairly easily. So I think this would also be a record number of participants in this T20 World Cup. So that's a really good signs, and I hope that these teams can aren't just here to make up numbers, but really to compete and to do their best, get as far as possible, potentially make some upsets, because in sports we all love an upset. We all love a team that most persons wouldn't expect to do well to come in and then really shock the favorites, really put some pressure to let you know that the sport is improving, and that is something that I'm really looking forward to from these teams for this World Cup.
Sure, sure. And it's a saying, right? Cricket was born in England, but actually got nurtured in India and Caribbean
Yeah.
side. So amazing, right? So yeah, I want to ask you some other sort of question apart from the international leagues. I remember there's a channel called Star Sports in India, and I saw there are a lot of beach cricket from Caribbean islands. Is there currently active the beach cricket?
I don't think there is. At least if there is, that would that would be news to me, because I would want to be part of that. However, like I said, that for me, cricket has been a sport that's really easy to get into because it's so
Mhm.
easy to be played. So I remember when I was young, we would play. I'm not sure if it's, I'm not sure if it was a kind of cricket or a kind of game you played when you were growing up. We'd play a game
Mhm.
called bat up and catch.
Mhm.
If you've heard of that.
Backward cricket, right?
No, bat up and catch. So the idea is that there would be no wickets, there'd be no
Okay.
stumps, anything like that. What we will have is one person with a ball, a group of
Mhm.
other persons, and then one person with a bat. So the idea is to throw the ball to the person with the bat, and they have to hit the ball up in the air, right?
Oh,
And then the group
okay.
has to try to catch a ball, and whoever catches the ball, it is their turn to bat.
Fair enough. So it's like an like a few individuals and one individual who's batting who's had to put the ball on air and the people who catch will going
Yeah,
to bat, right?
right.
It's
So
fascinating. It's like a catch practice for a lot of people. This is the
right,
reason you West Indian
yeah.
people are very good fielders. Yeah.
So that really helps with that in the case where even if you might not have the space to play full cricket,
Sure.
you can find ways to incorporate parts of the sport. And I think that might have been what you have seen or noticed, where persons are playing on the beach, where they might not have the best areas to actually play the sport, but their love for the sport is really manifested it in different ways.
Sure, sure. Tell me one more thing. I'm sure West Indies is something that when it comes to Test cricket, okay, and obviously this year went really, really well. This year till now, when it comes to
Yeah,
Australian tour, when Australian tour came and we saw Shamar Joshua from Guyana doing really well for this country, right? So and Andrew Colley, because Andrew Colley is from, I guess he's from Jamaica, right? If I'm not
right,
wrong.
yeah.
How you see his Test coaching?
Right. So if I remember correctly, he was given that role last year, around sometime last year. And as um, he had stepped in as interim coach in a time when there's a lot of changes, transitions, and as a coach, he had a big task ahead of him, and he really took to that. Really accepted the challenge. He stuck it out. There were good time. There are obviously some results that we wouldn't have wanted because again, it's a game and um, it's a competition, so you're not going to win all the time. And I think there has been a real turnaround towards that,
Mm-hmm.
especially with that game against Australia. We lost the series, I believe, but that
Yeah.
win was our first in Australia since. Well, I think it's our first ever. I will check,
No,
but
no. After '97, Brian Lara's
right,
team, '97 team, right?
right.
After
So
that, they
yeah,
won. Yeah.
yeah. So it's been a really long while, and I think those are really good showings. That even though we lost the series, we had a really good performance.
You didn't lose the series, I guess. It's a draw series, 1-1.
Impressive. No, I believe we had the last 2-1-1-1.
It's about T20 cricket. T20 cricket. You lost
Oh,
T20
right, right,
cricket against Australia. Yeah.
right. Sorry, my apologies. Then I'm mixing the format, but yeah, especially with the heroics of Joseph, as you said, a really young player coming in, I think it really spells that there is the quality there, and I think Coley has really shown that he's committed to the task.
Hmm.
There hasn't been any real deep drop off under him. He has done fairly well. The team is performing in situations above the expectations that some persons might have for them. So I think for now the trust is there in him. How well he continues on in the future, that is something
Sure.
that we have to watch and see. But I would only hope for the best for them, and as well
Absolutely.
for him as well as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, let's jump into other setup. I think I have 15 minutes time more. I want to ask you about apart from cricket, what sort of sports that you follow and you write? I want to know. Yes, I know about you write track and field. You write about football as well. Apart from that, how many sports you follow?
Um, for me, it's basically any sport. Even if that's sport that I don't know about, I would like to learn about it on the job as well. Recently, I did a story in horse racing. I don't really follow horse
Mhm.
racing, but I did a story on that, and it's more about learning about how sports have really impact individuals. There's also rugby, which has been really picking up a bit in Jamaica. Um, um, excuse me. Lacrosse as well has been set up in Jamaica. There's swimming that we've
Lacrosse is there, right?
yeah.
Lacrosse
There's
is a bit of dangerous game in many ways, right?
I mean I haven't played it, but I think I understand where that could have the danger in it.
Mm.
Um, I recently spoke as well with hockey. Jamaica recently made its debut at the Hockey Fives World Cup. Wasn't the strongest debut, obviously, as a country that's making the debut. There's always going to be up against the challenge against teams that are more established and have that history in it. There's also curling. If you did
Okay.
not know, Jamaica, even there's a tropical island, they have done curling. There's the curling federation. They competed at the Pan Continental Championship, and they had finished second behind China in the Division B, and that's something that they really want to continue going on. So yeah, it's really about any sport.
What
There's
about
no
tennis?
tennis as well. Yeah. I there was a recent tennis tournament I didn't cover it, so I don't know the exact details where Jamaica
Yeah.
underperformed a bit, but there is there. But that is something that we've also been as a country has been growing in. So for me, there isn't any sport that I say, oh, I don't do that sport. But it's more a case where I might not know as much about this sport, but I'm willing to learn and get into that as I research and follow those stories.
Yeah, no, actually, I really appreciated that because I remember, like you mentioned about just better to say if you're saying no, just better to say yes and then see what will happen, right?
Right.
This time, a lot of this is the case. If you don't know anything, it's okay. Just say yes. Then I'm sure a lot of people are there to make sure that you learn and then you can actually improvise on that side, right?
Yeah, because especially in these small sports that might not have as big following, you'll be
Mm.
surprised at how willing they are to teach you about their sports. Because they might not have the following and they want to share those passions. So it's really good to always say yes, and then when you're there to learn on the spot, to not just learn the sport, but to learn but to learn about the persons behind the sport. Why did they start it? Why is this a sport that might they might be interested in, even if it's not a commercially viable or a sport that is really present in persons eyes. So I think those are really good opportunities to learn about.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about Jamaican Premier League, right?
Right.
Obviously, it's a very huge, popular tournament over there. What about attendance of people?
Okay. In regards to that, the attendance is fairly good for the level that it is at right now.
Mm,
There are teams in the Premier League that their their facilities aren't at the level that they would need for that. So what the league does is that it has highlighted a um few facilities that are
mm,
at the level, and then they play the teams that might not have a home ground that is ready, they would
okay.
play their games at those facilities. For example, there is a facility known as the Stadium East, which is beside our national stadium. It's a smaller facility that is
Mhm.
beside our national stadium. So when there are teams that say might not have their facilities, then they would play their matches at Stadium East, which has a facility to hold a certain amount. So it's not a case where like on European league that might have the tens of thousands of fans. What
Mm.
and what the JPL has is that it has its loyal supporters that are willing to turn out week in week out at these facilities that have been selected, and they've always shown their support, as well as they have also done live streaming. You can probably see some of them on YouTube that
Yeah,
are
I
there.
think you have few channels. I remember when I just got to know about
Yeah,
JPL, there are a lot of channels who, apart from YouTube, they also
yeah,
broadcast this particular tournament.
right. So the main broadcasters are Sportsmax. Those are the ones that are the main broadcasters, and they also share those broadcasts with another channel called Flow Sports, which
Okay.
so they both share those responsibilities of covering it. So yeah, in regards to turnout, certain teams that are the bigger teams, obviously, across the world, the, the bigger teams always carry more followings. For example, the Mount Pleasant, the Arnett Gardens, those teams
Yeah.
are teams that are really big followings. They carry thousands and thousands of players each
Yeah, they are
game.
on top right now. Yeah.
Right. So I think well, Mount Pleasant are the defending champions, but right now the team that is leading the table is Cavalier, which are the who were the champions the season before Mount Pleasant. So
Mm.
those are teams that are really done well, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
really
I think.
care that support.
Uh, what about your favorite team?
As a journalist, I shouldn't
Yeah,
have a
you
favorite.
you tend to be unbiased, but you have to be
Yeah,
quite a
right.
bit.
Like I've said earlier before, I've actually played football,
Okay.
and the team that I played for is currently in the Premier League now, and that's Mullines United. I played for them since I was 13 years old up to no, well, before I was 13, because I played for them in the under 13 division. I made my senior debut for them when I was about 16, 17.
Okay.
So, uh, so they are my favorites. I still have that connection with them, with the president, with the chairpersons. Some of the players that are on the team now are players that I've played with when I was growing up. So they are my favorite. They aren't doing so well right now. They're about like I said, they are just above the relegation zone. So hopefully they can continue and stay in the Premier League. So
Yeah.
as a person, and as a fan, and as a former player, that is my team that I support.
So you play also, right? Football?
Um,
Is it so
not not currently
really
no,
nice?
but I did before. Yeah,
Yeah, but still, you had a nice history about football games, dude. It's something which
yeah,
obviously, for me, it's intriguing because I also love football, and I also I remember the game. I'm sure you saw that particular game against France versus Argentina, that World Cup final.
right. Yeah. I've
That
watched
was
that.
really crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good game.
Oh man, that's and E. Martin is the goalkeeper.
Right.
Oh, crazy, crazy. But still, I really felt for Mbappe that point of a time. He did very much for the team, and suddenly when he saw that, something which it's crazy. So, what about your national favorite team?
Oh, obviously that is Jamaica as well. Through the good times, the bad times, and the really bad times. It's like I've never lost that love for Jamaica. I've actually in the past worked for the
Okay.
for the Jamaica Football Federation on their social media teams. So I
Okay.
had a connection to be around the team and really learn about the players, certain players as well. So outside of Jamaica, because when you're from a small country, well, a country that doesn't do historically well in major tournaments, and I'm sure from India, when you're watching the World Cup,
Yeah.
it- you have to have that team that you support because India isn't there outside of like the Asian championships and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We have football. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, I've always been a fan of I've always been a fan of the Netherlands. I really like them. I fell in love with their team back in the 2010 World Cup. That run that they had to the finals, and since then I've really been a fan of their style of football, their total football, which is something that I really admire.
Okay. This is crazy. And I'm sure for me, look, when it comes to club, I think I really okay. Before that, I really like Liverpool, but after I don't know this season, I'm just fan of Manchester United. I don't know why, but suddenly there's a bit of crash happen, and for me, I love Manchester United now because they're champions, man. Yeah. So yeah, this is crazy. Thank you so much, Georgie, for this conversation. Yeah, yeah, I must appreciate for this, and obviously, I just hope we can conduct a lot of conversation after JPL or T20 World Cup. And for me, it's a great privilege for you to to host the show. Yeah,
Yeah, man. I hope it'll be a wonderful World Cup. I really expect it to really open cricket to a brand new market, and
yeah,
hopefully all the countries really turn out to do their best. And even and as well, it's a competition, So there's as much as there's going to be one champion, there's going to be 19 other teams that will go home with some disappointment. But I hope that each team is able to achieve some kind of personal goal that they can take pride
yeah,
in.
absolutely. Rather than thinking that we have to win the World Cup, it's better to thought that's to create a personal goal and let's see what will happen. Correct.
Yeah,
So, anyway, that's fine. Any feedback from your side? I would love to know about this podcast.
I think it's really good. You've really covered a lot of bases. With your questions, I can obviously tell the passion that you have for cricket and for sports as well. That
Yeah.
interest you have about learning about others and learning about the world around you. So this really is a good podcast, and I really wish you well and hope that you continue to improve and increase in size and potentially can hear about the award-winning Aman Verma who does well.
Sure. Likewise, dude. I think for you also, it's a World Cup is here, and I'm sure JPL you have to cover. So all the best for your future stints as well. Correct?
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you for this.